The billionaire laughed before she looked under the hood, and that was the only reason Noah Bennett still owned the engine she would soon ask permission to touch. It happened at 4:18 on a Friday afternoon outside Voss Auto Salvage, where the wind carried the smell of hot asphalt, old transmission fluid, and dust that had been sitting on broken cars longer than some people kept houses. Noah stood beside a rusted two-door coupe that looked like it had lost every argument time had ever started with it. The windshield was cracked from the passenger side to the center. The paint had faded into a patchwork of brown, dull black, and bare metal. One rear tire held air only because Tyler Brooks had filled it twice and told Noah not to drive faster than 15 miles per hour on the way home. The receipt in Noah's shirt pocket said $300, cash, paid in full. Emma stood near his left side with her blue toy car pressed against her chest, watching the tow rope as if it were something fragile. She was 6, small for her age, with serious eyes and a habit of asking questions only after she had decided the grown-ups were finished pretending. Noah checked the knot on the rope, then the angle of the front wheels, then the hitch on Tyler's old pickup. He did each thing slowly, the way a man works when he knows someone is watching and refuses to give them panic as entertainment. That was when the black SUV rolled past the salvage gate and stopped beside the private auction tent across the road. Victoria Langford stepped out first, followed by Preston Vale and 2 men in tailored jackets who looked at the world as if it had been arranged for their convenience. Behind them, under the white tent, polished cars waited for wealthy buyers beneath soft lights and velvet ropes. Noah's coupe sat across from all of it like a dare nobody had meant to make. Victoria saw the car before she saw Noah. Then she saw Emma. Then she laughed. It was not loud enough to be cruel in a simple way. It was worse than that. It was controlled, polished, effortless, the kind of laugh people use when they do not believe the person in front of them is important enough to offend. Preston glanced at the coupe and smiled. $300, he said, reading the corner of the receipt as Noah folded it away. For that? Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying the rusted hood, the sagging bumper, the mismatched wheels. That is not a car, she said. That is scrap with a steering wheel. The men near her laughed because she had given them permission. Emma's fingers tightened around the blue toy car. Noah heard it. He heard the words, the laughter, the small shift in his daughter's breathing. He did not turn it into a scene. He did not explain that the wheelbase was wrong for the body, or that the front end sat a half-inch lower than it should, or that something beneath the hood had made the metal speak differently when he tapped it with 2 knuckles. He only crouched beside Emma, checked that her shoelace was tied, and rested one hand gently on her shoulder. "Did we buy a bad car?" she asked. Noah looked at the rusted coupe, then at the people across the road who were already turning away. "No," he said. "We bought a question." Tyler started the pickup. The tow rope tightened. The old coupe jerked once, rolled forward, and followed them out of the salvage yard in a cloud of dust. Victoria Langford watched for only a second before stepping back toward the auction tent, already finished with the poor mechanic and his little girl. She had priced 1,000-horsepower machines under chandelier light, sold rare cars to men who flew in on private jets, and built a fortune knowing what rich people wanted before they said it out loud. But that afternoon, she missed the only thing that mattered. She laughed at the rust. Noah listened to the engine bay. And under that dead hood, hidden beneath grime, bad paint, and 30 years of being ignored, something priceless was waiting for the one man patient enough to notice. The road from Voss Auto Salvage to Noah Bennett's house was only 8 miles, but with Tyler Brooks's pickup in front, the tow rope stretched tight, and the rusted coupe wandering behind them like it had forgotten how roads worked, it felt longer. Noah kept both hands steady on the wheel of the coupe, listening to every groan in the frame. Every dry turn of the front hubs, every small vibration that traveled through the steering column into his palms. Emma rode with Tyler in the pickup because Noah would not put her in a car he had not inspected, and every time the truck slowed, he could see her small face turn in the rear window to check if he was still there. That mattered more than the laughter. It mattered more than Victoria Langford's polished voice, more than Preston Vale's smile, more than the way those men under the auction tent had looked at him as if poverty had made him entertaining. By the time they reached his neighborhood on Pine Hollow Road, 3 people had already stepped onto their porches. A rusted car on a tow rope was not quiet news. Mrs. Harlan from 2 houses down paused with a garden hose in her hand. A teenage boy on a bicycle stopped at the corner. Someone across the street moved a curtain and forgot to move it back. Noah guided the coupe into the narrow driveway beside his detached garage, the one he had converted into a workspace after his wife, Rachel, passed and the regular shop hours stopped fitting the life he had left. Tyler cut the engine and climbed out first. Emma ran to Noah before the dust had settled. "It followed us," she said, as if the car had made a choice. Noah looked at the coupe sitting crooked in the driveway, one tire low again, the cracked windshield catching the last orange light of the day. "It did," he said. Tyler leaned against the pickup and studied Noah's face. "You sure about this one?" Noah did not answer right away. He walked to the front fender and placed his hand on the metal. It was warm from the road, rough under his palm, ugly in every obvious way. But obvious things had never taught him much. His father had run a repair bay in Dayton for 34 years and used to say that cars lied through paint and told the truth through weight, sound, and stress. Noah had learned that before he learned algebra. He had rebuilt carburetors at 15, tuned race engines by ear at 22, and spent 6 years restoring vintage European cars for men who never remembered his name after writing checks bigger than his annual rent. Then Rachel got sick. Then the hospital bills came. Then the work that required travel became impossible because Emma needed breakfast, school pickup, bedtime stories, and a father who came home when he said he would. So Noah became the quiet mechanic behind a small house, fixing delivery vans, farm trucks, and neighborhood cars while the world of polished auctions moved on without him. Emma came to stand beside him. "Why did that lady laugh?" she asked. Tyler looked down. Noah kept his hand on the fender. He could have said that rich people sometimes confused shine with value. He could have said that some people saw a man with grease on his shirt and decided the rest of the story for him. Instead, he looked at his daughter and gave her the truth in a size she could carry. Because she only saw the outside. Emma looked at the coupe, then at him. "What did you see?" Noah glanced toward the hood. The gap lines were wrong. The front springs carried weight they should not have carried. When he had tapped the firewall at the yard, the sound had come back dense and strange, like reinforcement hidden beneath old paint. "I saw a question," he said again. "And tomorrow we find out if it has an answer." That night, after Emma fell asleep with the blue toy car on her pillow, Noah stood alone in the garage doorway, looking at the coupe under the bare bulb over the driveway. He did not feel lucky. Luck was too loud a word for what this was. What he felt was smaller, colder, and more demanding. A car everyone laughed at had brought something silent to his door. And Noah had spent his whole life listening to silent things. Victoria Langford returned to Langford Premier Auctions before sunset, and the air changed the moment the glass doors closed behind her. Outside, dust still hung over the salvage road and the image of Noah Bennett's rusted coupe was already fading from the afternoon. Inside, everything was polished, measured, and expensive. The marble floor reflected the soft glow of chandeliers. A silver Porsche sat beneath a spotlight near the east wall. A black Aston Martin waited on a raised platform with velvet ropes keeping ordinary hands away from extraordinary prices. Staff moved quietly with tablets and wireless headsets, preparing for a private preview where no one arrived by accident and no one asked what anything cost unless they were ready to prove they could pay. Victoria walked through it all without slowing, her cream coat folded over one arm, her expression calm enough that people stepped aside before she needed to ask. Preston Vale followed half a pace behind her, still amused by what they had seen outside the salvage yard. "You have to admit," he said, glancing down at his tablet, "a $300 coupe being dragged past a 7-figure auction preview is almost poetic." Victoria gave a small smile, not because it was kind, but because it fit the room. It was not poetic, she said. It was a man confusing hope with judgment. Preston laughed softly. Two junior associates near the registration desk heard enough to smile without knowing the whole story. That was how ridicule traveled in places like this. It did not need volume. It only needed permission from someone important. Victoria stopped beside a restored Ferrari under chandelier light and ran her eyes along the flawless red paint, the chrome trim, the documents displayed in a leather folder on a pedestal beside it. Provenance. Certification. Ownership history. Matching numbers. Verified restoration. These were the pillars of her world. Value, to Victoria, was not guessed. It was documented, photographed, insured, authenticated, and presented under lighting designed to make hesitation feel foolish. She had built Langford Premier Auctions on that belief. At 29, she had turned her father's regional collector network into one of the most selective luxury auto auction houses in the country. She could identify a buyer's ceiling by the way he looked at a hood ornament. She could tell which collectors were bidding for passion and which were bidding because another man at the table wanted the same thing. She knew polished value better than almost anyone alive. That was why Noah's car had been easy for her to dismiss. It had no shine, no papers, no proper transport, no professional handler, no story worth serving with champagne. It had a tired man at the wheel and a little girl holding a toy car. Preston leaned closer to the Ferrari's display folder. The funny part is he probably thinks he found something. Victoria looked toward the glass doors, where the salvage road was no longer visible from this angle. For one brief second, she saw Noah's face again, not embarrassed, not angry, just quiet. That bothered her more than she allowed it to. Men who had nothing usually wanted people to know they were offended. Noah had offered no performance at all. People like that need the idea of hidden treasure, Preston said. It makes bad purchases feel meaningful. Victoria turned away from the Ferrari. People like that need better advice. She said it evenly, and that was enough to close the subject. But as she crossed the auction hall, passing cars worth more than houses, the image remained where it should not have remained, the rusted hood, the little girl's question, Noah's hand resting on the fender as if he had heard something no one else could hear. Victoria could price a flawless car in seconds. She could not price a miracle covered in rust. Noah Bennett waited until the neighborhood went quiet before he opened the hood. Emma had finished her cereal for dinner because it was Friday and Friday had softer rules in their house, then carried her blue toy car into the garage and placed it on the workbench beside the socket tray. The small detached garage behind the house was barely wide enough for the coupe and Noah's tool cabinets, but it had kept them alive for 2 years. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling. The concrete floor held old oil shadows that no amount of scrubbing could erase. A photograph of Rachel was tucked into the frame of a shelf near the battery charger, watching over the room with the same quiet patience she had carried through every hard season. Noah lifted the hood slowly, expecting resistance from hinges that had forgotten their purpose, but it opened with a deep metallic complaint and held. Rust flakes drifted down like dirty snow. Emma stood on an overturned milk crate and pointed her flashlight where he asked, both hands wrapped around the handle to keep the beam steady. At first, the engine bay looked like what the outside promised: grime, bad wiring, cracked hoses, mouse-chewed insulation, years of neglect layered over everything. Noah did not touch anything for almost a full minute. He only looked. That was something his father had taught him before he ever let him hold a wrench. Do not reach before the machine has had a chance to tell you what it is. The first thing wrong was the mount. Not broken. Wrong. The bracket on the driver's side had been modified by hand, not in the desperate way backyard mechanics cut corners, but with clean old welds and reinforcement plates shaped by someone who understood stress load. Noah shifted the flashlight slightly. Right there, sweetheart, he said. Emma adjusted the beam. Is it bad? No, Noah said. It is interesting. The second thing wrong was the block itself. It sat too far back for the body, tucked closer to the firewall than any factory setup should have allowed. The front springs made sense now. The weight distribution was different. Deliberate. Noah wiped a patch of grime near the lower edge of the block with a rag, then stopped when a row of numbers appeared beneath the dirt. They were not cast into the metal. They were hand-stamped. Uneven. Old. Careful. His breathing changed, just slightly. Emma heard it. "Dad?" Noah did not answer right away. He leaned closer, following the line of the intake manifold, noticing the geometry, the way it curved inward with a purpose he had not seen on production cars from that era. Near the base, almost hidden under grease, was a small mark shaped like a broken crescent inside a circle. He had seen something like it once in an archive photo taped to his father's shop wall, years before Rachel, before Emma, before Bills had taught him how small a month could become. Noah reached for his phone, took one photograph, then another, careful not to use flash against the wrong angle. Emma lowered the flashlight an inch. "Is it still a question?" she whispered. Noah looked at the rusted fenders, the cracked windshield beyond the hood, the cheap receipt on the workbench, and then back at the engine that did not belong. "Yes," he said. But now it is asking louder. Outside. Pine Hollow Road slept under porch lights and quiet trees. Across town, Victoria Langford stood among polished cars and believed the story had ended at the salvage gate. In Noah's garage, under one bare bulb, the outside was still junk. The engine was telling a different story. Preston Vale arrived at Noah Bennett's driveway at 9:12 the next morning in a black sedan that looked too clean for Pine Hollow Road. Noah saw it through the garage window before the engine turned off. He was standing beside the coupe with a gray rag in one hand and a notebook open on the fender, where he had written a hand-stamped serial number 3 times to make sure he had not imagined it. Emma's backpack sat on the workbench beside her blue toy car, and she was at the small card table near the wall finishing a spelling worksheet before Tyler Brooks came to drive her to school. Noah closed the notebook before Preston reached the open garage door. That was the first thing Preston noticed. The second was the hood, still raised. His eyes moved past Noah too quickly and landed on the engine bay with a little more interest than a man should have in scrap metal. "Mr. Bennett," Preston said, wearing a smile that had been trained to look friendly without becoming warm. "I hope I am not interrupting." Noah folded the rag once. "You are." Preston let the smile hold. "Then I will be brief. Ms. Langford felt yesterday may have been unnecessarily awkward. She respects working people, and she thought perhaps the situation could be simplified." He reached into his jacket and removed a narrow envelope, cream-colored, expensive, out of place beside the oil stains and socket trays. "We are prepared to offer $1,000 for the vehicle. Cash equivalent. Today." Emma looked up from her worksheet. Noah did not look at her, but he felt the moment change because she had heard the number. $1,000 was groceries, utilities, school clothes, a little breathing room. It was also too fast. People did not offer triple money for junk unless they had stopped believing it was junk. Noah set the rag on the workbench. "She laughed at it yesterday." Preston gave a small shrug. "Ms. Langford laughs at many things. It does not mean she cannot be practical. Practical would be letting me keep what I bought." Preston's eyes flicked to the engine again. It lasted less than a second. Noah saw it anyway. "Mr. Bennett, you bought an unidentified, non-running vehicle from a salvage lot with no meaningful provenance and no inspection record. You may discover unpleasant costs before you discover anything useful. Storage, title issues, transport requirements, environmental concerns. A man in your position could avoid all of that and walk away with a profit." The words were clean. The insult underneath them was not. Noah stepped slightly to the side, placing himself between Preston and the open hood without making the movement obvious. Emma watched from the table, pencil still in her hand. Preston noticed her watching and softened his voice, which somehow made it worse. There is no shame in taking a good offer. Noah looked at the envelope, then at Preston. No, Preston's smile thinned. You have not opened it. I heard it. For the first time, Preston's polished expression slipped at the edge. Not enough for most people. Enough for Noah. You might want to think carefully. Ms. Langford's world is complicated. Auctions, ownership records, authentication. Once people begin asking questions, situations can become difficult for private individuals. Noah reached for the hood and lowered it slowly until the latch caught with a firm click. Not anger. Decision. Then I will ask better questions. Preston stood there for another moment, the envelope still in his hand, the black sedan waiting behind him, Emma's blue toy car sitting on the workbench beside a line of old wrenches. Then he placed the envelope back inside his jacket. Suit yourself, he said. Noah watched him leave without answering. When the sedan pulled away, Emma climbed down from her chair and came to stand beside him. Was that lady trying to buy our question? She asked. Noah looked at the closed hood, then at the tire marks the sedan had left in the driveway dust. Yes, he said. And that means the question is worth keeping. Noah Bennett waited until Emma was at school before he called. Raymond Cole. He had not spoken to Raymond in almost 9 years, not since Rachel's hospital visits had turned Noah's life into a calendar of appointments, invoices, and quiet drives home with nothing playing on the radio. Raymond had known Noah's father before retirement softened his voice and slowed his walk, back when he traveled the country documenting endurance cars, lost prototypes, and the kind of racing history that survived in garages long after companies forgot they had made it. Noah found the number in an old notebook inside a coffee can full of receipts and spare fuses. He dialed once, hung up before the second ring, stood beside the coupe for a full minute, then dialed again. Raymond answered on the fourth ring. Cole. Noah looked at the closed hood. Mr. Cole, this is Noah Bennett. Daniel Bennett's son. There was a pause, long enough for memory to cross the line. Noah from Dayton. Yes, sir. Your father could hear a timing chain from across a parking lot. Noah looked down and almost smiled. He said you could identify a car from a bad photograph and half a rumor. Raymond made a quiet sound that might have been a laugh. Depends on the photograph. What did you find? Noah sent the first image while the phone was still against his ear, the hand-stamped serial number, the intake curve, the small broken crescent mark near the manifold, the modified mount, the block tucked too far back against the firewall. Raymond did not speak while the images arrived. Noah could hear paper shifting on the other end, then the faint creak of a chair. Where is the car? Raymond asked. The tone had changed. Noah felt it. My garage. Do not sell it. Noah looked through the garage window toward the driveway where Preston's tire marks still crossed the dust from that morning. Someone already tried to buy it. Then do not let them near it again until I get there. Noah set the phone on speaker and pulled a stool closer to the workbench. What am I looking at? Raymond exhaled slowly. Maybe nothing. Maybe an old imitation. Maybe a story people have been arguing about since 1974. Noah waited. Raymond continued, careful now. There was a private engineering program called Callister Performance. Small outfit. Brilliant people. They were building a V12 prototype for endurance racing, natural aspiration, experimental cooling passages, unusual mounting geometry. It was supposed to run at Sebring before the project collapsed. One engine vanished before the final audit. Some said it was scrapped. Some said it was hidden in a mule chassis. There were no confirmed photographs after the shutdown. Noah looked at the rusted coupe. It sat crooked in the garage, ugly and still. Callister, he said. That crescent mark was theirs? Not officially, Raymond said. That is why I need to see it in person. Noah opened the drawer where Emma kept crayons when she did homework beside him and found the receipt from Voss Auto Salvage folded under a pencil. $300. Paid in full. The number looked almost foolish now, too small to hold the weight gathering around it. How soon can you come? Noah asked. Tomorrow morning if my knees behave and the interstate does not punish me. Another pause. Noah, listen carefully. If this is what I think it is, the body may not matter at all. The value is not the car people laughed at. It is what someone hid inside it. After the call ended, Noah stood alone in the garage for a long time. He did not open the hood. He did not take more pictures. He only placed Emma's blue toy car farther from the edge of the workbench and covered the coupe with a clean canvas tarp. For the first time, he understood that the car might not be rare. It might be missing. The rain started at 3:40 that afternoon, thin at first, then steady enough to turn Pine Hollow Road dark and reflective. Noah Bennett had just picked Emma up from school when the black sedan returned, this time parking closer to the driveway than before. Preston Vale stepped out with a leather folder tucked under his arm and no umbrella, as if inconvenience was something meant for other people. Noah watched him from the garage doorway while Emma sat inside the house by the front window, still wearing her backpack, her blue toy car resting on the sill beside her hand. The coupe stayed covered beneath the clean canvas tarp. Noah had moved it farther inside after Raymond's call and locked the side door for the first time in months. Preston noticed the tarp. He noticed the lock. He noticed that Noah was no longer leaving the hood open where curious eyes could borrow information. Mr. Bennett, Preston said, brushing rain from his sleeve, we should finish this before it becomes unnecessarily complicated. Noah stood with a shop rag in his hand, calm and still. I thought we already finished. Preston smiled, but the rain made it look thinner. He opened the folder on the workbench without being invited and placed 3 documents beside Emma's blue toy car. Transfer agreement. Release of claim. Confidential purchase addendum. The words sat clean and expensive on Noah's scarred wooden bench, surrounded by wrenches, old spark plugs, and the quiet smell of oil. The offer has changed, Preston said. $5,000. Immediate payment. You sign today, we remove the vehicle by evening, and everyone avoids a great deal of trouble. Noah looked at the papers, then at Preston. He did not touch the pen. What trouble? Preston leaned one hand on the bench, careful to avoid the grease. Title irregularities. Salvage disputes. Prior ownership questions. Authentication challenges. You are a private individual with limited resources, Mr. Bennett. Ms. Langford has legal teams who handle matters like this before breakfast. Through the front window, Emma watched her father's back. Noah saw her reflection in the garage glass. That mattered. It changed the shape of his anger before it could become visible. He picked up the pen, not to sign, but to move it away from the documents. You came in the rain with $5,000 for a car you called scrap yesterday. Preston's eyes tightened. I called it an opportunity to be practical. No, Noah said quietly. You called it mine. For the first time, Preston stopped smiling entirely. Rain tapped the garage roof in a steady rhythm. The covered coupe sat behind Noah like a secret breathing under canvas. Preston lowered his voice. You are standing near something you do not understand. Noah turned slightly toward the house. Emma was still at the window. He could see the blue toy car in her hand. He thought of Raymond's warning, of his father's voice, of Rachel paying bills at this same workbench years ago and telling him that fear was allowed to visit but not allowed to make decisions. Noah pushed the folder back across the bench. Then I will wait for someone who understands it better than both of us. Preston stared at the folder as if it had insulted him. That would be unwise. Noah placed one hand on the tarp-covered hood, not possessively, just firmly enough to make the answer visible. So was laughing at it. The garage went quiet except for the rain. Preston gathered the documents slowly, sliding each page back into the folder with a care that could not hide his frustration. At the driveway, he paused beside the black sedan and looked once more at the covered car. They had laughed when Noah bought it. Now they were standing in his garage asking him to give it back. After the sedan pulled away, Emma opened the side door and stepped into the garage. "Did he want our question again?" she asked. Noah looked at the rain, then at the tarp, then at his daughter. "Yes," he said. "And tomorrow, we find out why." Raymond Cole arrived the next morning in a faded navy sedan with Ohio plates and a cardboard box of old folders on the passenger seat. He was 71, careful when he stepped out, moving slowly but not weakly, the way old mechanics and old historians move when they have learned not to waste motion. Noah Bennett met him in the driveway before Emma left for school, and Raymond looked first at Noah, then at the covered coupe inside the garage, then at the blue toy car in Emma's hand. "Your grandfather would have told you to make me coffee before showing me trouble," Raymond said. Emma looked up at Noah. "Is it trouble?" Noah opened the garage door the rest of the way. "It is still a question." Raymond walked in without touching the car. That was the first reason Noah trusted him. The second was the silence. Raymond did not make jokes about rust. He did not ask how much Noah paid. He did not treat the coupe like trash waiting for permission to matter. He walked around it once, studying the wheelbase, the hood line, the front suspension, the odd weight in the nose. Tyler Brooks arrived 5 minutes later and stood near the driveway. Victoria Langford arrived after him. She did not come in the black SUV this time. She came in a silver sedan with Preston Vale beside her, both of them dressed for a world that did not include cracked concrete floors and a bare bulb over a workbench. Noah had not invited them. Raymond had. "If this is what I think it is," Raymond had said on the phone before leaving, "the people who laughed at it should be in the room when they stop laughing." Victoria stepped into the garage and looked at the covered car, then at Noah. Her expression was controlled, but not casual. Preston stood behind her with his hands folded, trying to look patient and failing at it. Raymond removed his glasses, wiped them with a cloth, and nodded toward the tarp. Noah pulled it back slowly. The coupe looked no better in morning light. Rust along the fenders. Dull paint. Cracked windshield. A car that still gave people permission to underestimate it. Raymond leaned over the front, and Noah lifted the hood. No one spoke. Morning light moved through the garage door and fell across the engine bay. Raymond placed one hand near the block but did not touch the metal. He followed the hand-stamped serial number with his eyes, then the modified mount, then the intake geometry, then the small crescent mark half hidden near the manifold. His face changed so little that Emma missed it. Noah did not. Victoria's phone was in her hand. It lowered slowly. Preston took one step closer, then stopped when Raymond raised 2 fingers without looking at him. "Do not crowd it," Raymond said. His voice was quiet, but the garage obeyed. He opened one of his folders and took out a black and white photograph protected in a plastic sleeve. The image showed an engine on a stand, surrounded by men in short-sleeved shirts from another decade. Raymond held it beside the open hood. The manifold curve matched. The mount geometry matched. The crescent mark matched. Raymond looked at Noah then, and the years seemed to settle behind his eyes. "This is not an imitation." Preston's jaw tightened. Victoria stopped breathing for half a second. Raymond leaned closer, reading the stamp one final time. "Callister V12 prototype," he said. The words did not land loudly. They did not need to. Tyler's hands went still at his sides. Emma looked from Raymond to her father, sensing that the room had changed even if she did not know why. Victoria stared into the engine bay as if the rusted car had just spoken in a language she should have learned sooner. No one laughed after the old man said the engine's name. The silence after Raymond Cole said the name of the engine lasted longer than any shout would have. Noah Bennett stood beside the open hood with one hand resting on the fender, not gripping it, not claiming victory, just steadying himself against the weight of what had finally become visible. Emma stood near the workbench with her blue toy car held in both hands, watching the adults as they looked at the rusted coupe differently than they had before. Tyler Brooks had stopped leaning against the garage doorway. Preston Vale had gone very still. Victoria Langford stared into the engine bay, and for the first time since Noah had seen her outside the salvage gate, there was no polished certainty in her face. Raymond opened the cardboard box he had carried from his sedan and began laying out the past piece by piece. A black and white photograph from 1974. A photocopied engineering note. A race program from Sebring with a paragraph circled in pencil. A faded magazine clipping about Callister Performance closing before its prototype ever reached the track. He placed each document on Noah's workbench with the care of a man returning names to people who had been forgotten. The Callister program was small, Raymond said. Too small to survive its investors. But the engine was real. 12 cylinders, custom intake geometry, experimental cooling passages, unusual mounting structure. The final prototype disappeared before the auditors arrived. Victoria looked at Preston then. Not fully. Just enough. Preston's eyes moved away. Noah saw it. Raymond continued, pointing to the old photograph and then to the open hood. The body around it is not important. That was probably the point. Someone hid the engine inside something no collector would chase. Emma looked at the coupe. Like a disguise? Raymond smiled at her softly. Exactly like a disguise. Noah stayed quiet, but the word settled in him. Disguise. For 2 days, people had laughed at what protected the thing they wanted. Rust had done what money could not. It had kept greedy hands away because greedy eyes were too impatient to look beneath it. Victoria stepped closer to the workbench, her voice lower than before. Can provenance be established? Raymond looked at her over his glasses. Not by wishing. But yes, if the chain matches the storage records, the estate documents, the salvage transfer, and the stamps. It will take work. Preston spoke too quickly. Which is exactly why Mr. Bennett should let professionals handle this before he damages the opportunity. The room shifted. Noah did not raise his voice. He reached into the drawer, removed the folded receipt from Voss Auto Salvage, and placed it beside Raymond's documents. $300. Paid in full. Then he placed the title paperwork Tyler had delivered that morning beside it. I will let professionals verify it, Noah said. I will not let anyone take it. Preston's mouth tightened. Victoria said nothing. That silence told Noah more than an apology would have. Raymond gathered the photographs into a neat stack and looked at Noah. You need a secure storage agreement, an independent appraiser, and a provenance attorney before this leaves your property. I know someone, Victoria said. Noah looked at her. She seemed different inside his garage now, smaller somehow, not in worth, but in certainty. Someone who works for you, he asked. Victoria held his gaze. Someone who will work for the record. Noah did not answer right away. He looked at Emma's toy car on the bench beside the photographs, then at the engine hidden inside a body everyone had dismissed. He thought about Rachel, about bills, about every time he had fixed something important for someone who only noticed him when it was broken. Then everything is in writing, he said. Every document. Every name. Every hand that built it. Raymond nodded once. Victoria nodded after him. Preston did not. Outside, the morning had brightened across Pine Hollow Road, but inside the garage, no one moved toward the door. The truth under the rust had changed the value of the car. More than that, it had changed the value of the man standing beside it.